The Washington Commanders defensive coordinator search is over as they hire Daronta Jones. We're going to be talking about why this could be a great fit for the Washington Commanders. And so before we go ahead and we jump into it, I first want to remind you to hit that like, hit that subscribe, and follow the channel as we talk nothing but Washington Commanders football daily. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and let's jump into it as we are talking about the new defensive coordinator for the Washington Commanders, Daronta Jones. And so, if you want to read about this, you can head over to ESPN.com. This is written by John Keim. And so let's go ahead and let's start with just really who Daronta Jones is. And so we'll start with just his experience. And so first and foremost, he has been the defensive back coach with the Vikings since 2022. And so from 2022 to 2025, he's next. I love the experience as far as who he's worked with. And so he has worked with Mike Zimmer. And so Mike Zimmer used to be the head coach of the Minnesota Vikings. He won a Super Bowl with the Dallas Cowboys as a coordinator. He is terrific when it comes to just having defenses play at an elite level. And so I love the fact that he's worked with him. Also, too, he's worked with Marvin Lewis. And so Marvin Lewis was the head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals for quite some time, but he also won a Super Bowl ring as a coordinator with the Ravens. And so this is another coach that certainly knows about defense here. And so I like the fact that he has worked with him. And also, too, lately he has worked with Brian Flores. And so that's going to be a plus, which we'll talk about that in a moment. But he's also worked with Vance Joseph. And so Vance Joseph is the current defensive coordinator for the Denver Broncos, and they had an elite defense. And so I like the fact that with Daronta Jones, he has got a chance to call defense. I know it's been on the college level, but I like the fact that he's done that. But I love the fact that he has worked with coaches that have won Super Bowls as coordinators and just really have a defensive mind. And so I love that about him. And so next, some of the other things here with Daronta Jones coming into this thing is that, number one, he's from the DMV area. And so I think that he's like from Maryland from what I'm seeing here. And so I love that. I think that that shows you that he's very familiar probably with what's going on with this franchise, what it means to the city and everything else like that. And so I think that you could expect that type of passion and juice to be out there every Sunday. And so I love that. And then next, with him, I'm just excited to see what it's going to look like as far as the scheme and everything else, because we talked about this with Brian Flores and just really him being, a candidate probably that we would want to see because of just, how he is a guru defensively with just being aggressive, getting the turnovers and everything else. And just really, it would change just, I think, the whole mindset of the defense by getting a guy like Brian Flores over. But I think that you will get that too with Daronta Jones. And I think that, there's three things that come to mind with this hire. And so the first thing is I think that he is going to bring a little bit of that Brian Flores style to us. And so I think that, number one, because he's a defensive back coach, I think that you can expect for some great secondary play. I'd expect that this is really going to help Mikey Samra. I think this is going to help Trey Amos as well. The possibility of getting other, young corners over there, depending on what the Washington Commanders are going to do in free agency or the draft. I think that that's really going to help us out because I do think that that back end for sure is going to need to get better. You've got some talent with those two players that I just mentioned in Sam Rastil and also to Trey Amos. I think that they're going to need to probably add somebody else to the fold here. But I like the fact that he's coached up defensive backs at an elite level and he's got them to be a ball hawking type of secondary. I think that that's what we want to see with the secondary is not just covering guys, but also taking the opportunity to make the plays on the ball. And so I think that he's going to be fine as far as coaching, the corners and the safeties up that way. And then the next thing is just going to be the aggressive defense. I think that that is really what I'm looking forward to seeing because, I think so many times with the defense, we were seeing them just really, they were just reacting so much. I'm saying? Like they're reacting to the offense. And I get that defensively, that's what you're doing and everything else. But I think that elite defenses, when they're really, really good, they're the ones making the offense react. And I think that we want to see some more of that just with some more aggressive play calls and things like that. And so I'm hoping that that is exactly what we are going to see here from Daronta Jones. And lastly, I'm looking forward to seeing just how exotic the blitzes could possibly be here. I think he's going to be very creative just with the type of blitz packages and things that he can bring here. And so let's see, this is why I'm excited to see what this team is going to do in the NFL draft, especially if they go defense here and you get you a game wrecker, in your front seven. And then also too, they make some changes here in the secondary and everything else. And you bring in some guys that, they can play a little bit closer to the box here and also cover. I'd like to see what he would do as far as utilizing that personnel and everything else. And so very excited to see what type of wrinkle we are going to get here from Daronta Jones. And so I must say that I thought that this was a little bit of a surprise here because I thought that, perhaps the team was going to wait for Carl Scott. His team just advanced into the Super Bowl. And so remember, he was with the Seahawks here. And so from my understanding with Carl Scott, he could have been interviewed during the bye week leading into the Super Bowl, but he can't be hired until after the February 9th date there. And so maybe the Commanders, didn't want to wait there. They got somebody here in Daronta Jones, who I think is going to be an excellent fit for this team. And so just the question now is just where does this team go? Because I think that now that you have a defensive coordinator that is coming in and has worked, just again with, Marvin Lewis, he's worked with Mike Zimmer, he's worked with Brian Flores, he's going to bring that type of attitude and that type of nastiness to the defense. And I think that just with what we saw last season with this defense, that certainly means that some personnel change is coming. And so I'm curious to see what he's going to do, especially with some of these veterans on the roster. Are they going to fit what he is trying to do defensively? Is he going to try to go a lot younger in free agency there? I know obviously too, you have to think about what Adam Peters wants to do, but certainly, when you are bringing in your defensive coordinator, he is certainly going to have a say here as far as how this defense is going to shape out and the direction that you're going to go in the NFL draft. I talked about that before. And I think that, if you're looking at this on the flip side and you just kind of, maybe not, I guess, as sold on the hire, I can see that because you're saying, okay, he was a defensive coordinator with LSU, but being a defensive coordinator now in the National Football League, is he going to have the success here? And I like it. I like the energy here because I think it's the same thing here with David Blau. You're looking at, a coach that he hasn't had the play calling experience, so to speak, but I think that they've been around enough good coaches. They understand what they need to do. And especially if you've been in the building like David Blau, I think he understands really what's going on with the personnel and everything else. And so I really do think he's going to bring a splash to the offense this upcoming season. And like I said, going back to just Daronta Jones here, coming from the area and just really with what he's worked with, I think that he is going to bring another wrinkle here to the Commanders. And so that's exactly what we want to see, some more juice, in the offseason here with these hires. And so I like where they're going with this. Let's see what it looks like. You guys let me know in the comments here. What do you think? Is this going to push the Washington Commanders forward from this last season where it was a bit of a disaster? Hopefully they can get back to getting to the NFC East Championship game and hopefully beyond and then some years to come. And so anyway, let me know what you guys are thinking here with this hire. And so once again, we have Daronta Jones as the new defensive coordinator for the Washington Commanders. And so as we always say, go Commanders. And I will see you guys on the next one. All right, peace.